As one of the country's top 5 public universities, the University of Florida is on a mission to transform education and continue to develop breakthroughs that will help grow the nation's economy. As a national leader in AI, along with our #2 nationally ranked Career Connections Center, our students have never been better prepared to make a difference in the world. To learn more about how the University of Florida fuels bold ideas that make an impact across the globe, visit fromflorida.ufl.edu.
Time to get educated here on Blunt Business on cannabisradio.com. We're going to talk right now today to the folks at LIM College, which is based in Midtown Manhattan in New York City, a leading educational authority in the business of fashion and its adjacent fields, which recently launched a master's degree program for professional studies in the business of cannabis. And here to talk to me about it is the director of Business of Cannabis Degree Programs at LIM College, Michael Zaytsev. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. A master's program. I don't think I've heard anyone put this together yet, but the master's program in the business of cannabis, or the MPS program, will be delivered fully online and can be completed in 1 calendar year. It's designed for career changers as well as those who are interested in advancing their current cannabis-related careers. The coursework is going to encompass retailing, social and economic justice, marketing, supply chain, regulatory compliance, and more. And master's degree candidates will complete a capstone project where they will develop a formal plan for cannabis businesses and pitch it directly to industry professionals. And courses will be taught by professionals currently working in the cannabis industry. A 1-year master's degree program for cannabis. Talk to me about this need to create a master's program there, Michael.
Yeah, awesome. And also, just so everyone knows, we also have a bachelor's degree program as well.
We're going to bring that up a little bit, but I wanted to really focus on the fact, it's one of those things where I know we have the bachelor's, and there's a lot of bachelor's programs, but really the instinctiveness and of creating a master's program.
Yep. Yeah. So it's actually both of these degrees are the first of their kind in New York State and some of the first in the country. And I think the impetus behind this was a couple of things, but the main thing being that New York is getting started with adult use legalization right now. We're expecting draft regulations to come out in a matter of weeks, and then the whole licensing process and actually setting up stores and cultivation facilities and all that fun stuff. The expectation from the governor's office is that we're going to see something like 30 to 60,000 new jobs coming to New York State because of legal cannabis. And, over the years, I've encountered so many people from other industries who say, hey, I want to get into cannabis. I have no idea how to get started. I don't know much about the industry. I'm curious. I'm interested. How do I make that transition? And so here at LIM College, we thought that providing a master's degree program fully online for career switchers, for people who are just getting into cannabis or want to get into the industry, we thought this was a great step to offer formal education, networking with industry leading professionals who will be teaching the classes here, and a way to prepare people to enter a job in the industry and be productive from day one.
And I always think about, there was a school down here that we had, the Art Institute, which it's kind of the idea where the kind of areas of study are very similar. You have, for the most part, your business of fashion media, merchandising management, international business management, and marketing and visual studies. Cannabis is definitely an offshoot. What brought the idea of a cannabis bachelor's and master's degree program to light at LIM College?
Yeah, so it actually started out with, we did a panel on CBD in beauty products.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, and we saw a lot of interest from our current students. And so we said, oh, maybe we should, maybe there's something there. And what our school's leadership realized pretty quickly is that the things that we were really good at preparing students for careers in the business of fashion, those same skills and professional areas of focus were necessary in cannabis. So, some of the stuff you mentioned, supply chain management, retail operations, merchandising, branding and marketing, all of these things that the fashion industry relies on that are crucial in cannabis. But of course, cannabis is a unique beast and has its own nuances and idiosyncrasies that make it unique from any other industry. And so, we understood that there was our core competencies that we were really good at in fashion were transferable to cannabis. And so that's kind of how the programs here got started. And yeah, so we're excited. We also noticed that we had several alumni who had left their careers in fashion to get into cannabis, and they were extremely excited about, LIM getting into cannabis education as well.
Now, the other thing too I got to ask is about how much it took in terms of getting the curriculum together, getting the educators together to do this program. Like, what did you need to do within the confines of administration to get this program up and going?
Yeah, great question. So fortunately for me, a lot of the heavy lifting was done by my colleagues, and they got approval from New York State to be able to offer both of these degree programs. And then once they had approval, they actually went and created the academic director position that I now occupy. And they brought me in as the can guy, because I had been doing cannabis education networking events for about a decade in New York, and have written the book you see over my shoulder here, the Cannabis Business Book, and had been an advocate and educator in the cannabis space. And so part of my job, a great part of my job here, is to develop that curriculum and to bring in expert faculty from the industry to develop and teach those classes. Now, the really beautiful thing for me, given that this program is one of the first of its kind, is that I was able to go to some of the top people, in my opinion, in the industry and offer them the chance to share their knowledge with the next generation of the cannabis workforce. And so, because very few universities or colleges in the country actually offer anything like this, for a lot of these people, it was the first time that they'd ever been offered the chance to be a professor and to be a cannabis professor. And so actually it was pretty easy for me to recruit some really what I would consider world-class cannabis business leaders to come teach for us.
Now, so and I just want to make this point as well, because of the fact you're able to go ahead and put together the team to do this, and you had the help of the school together. One thing that we mentioned of is that because of your background, you're a two-time author, cannabis business coach, author of the Cannabis Business Book, founder and CEO of High New York, and the Cannabis Lab, and the NYCCFF. Can you tell me what those letters mean?
That's the New York City Cannabis Film Festival.
Ah, okay, there we go. Now, I want to ask you, by the way, you may have mentioned a book, for those who are listening on the program, I want to make mention of, it's the most recent book is the Cannabis Business Book, How to Succeed in Weed According to 50 Industry Insiders. You narrated it for Audible, so it's available in audiobook, and it's also available, I guess it would be paperback and online, Kindle, all that right there for you. So you got that to go and check out. And, take a look at it while we're listening to the program here. Now, the other thing I want to ask, besides the fact it's a one-year program, is that the coursework is going to encompass, as we said, retailing, social economic justice, marketing, supply chain, regulatory compliance, and the candidates will complete a capstone project. Now, as we mentioned, it's to create a formal plan of a cannabis business and pitch it directly to industry professionals. It feels like an incubator more than having to do a thesis at a traditional school.
Yeah, so I'll also add one of the classes, also the Business of Cultivation and Manufacturing. And so, yeah, I think we just wanted to prepare our graduates to be able to understand a cannabis business completely, from all of the different elements, whether it's marketing or compliance or the supply chain. And, we felt that there's no better way to test that understanding than to actually have students put together a plan and pitch it to people in the industry to get real-time feedback as if they were starting a business. So that's my understanding of why that capstone project is what it is. And, to be perfectly transparent, that was decided before I joined. So, I think that's just a pretty standard thing we do here at LIM, whether it's on the fashion side or the cannabis side, is try to get our students in front of the industry as much as possible so that they're really getting that experiential education plus real-time feedback and of course building relationships along the way.
So I want to just make sure to identify for those that are potentially students that want to go ahead and enter and enroll into this program. I get the feeling it's almost like what a business accelerator would be. An incubator where you have entrepreneurs that might have a great idea for business, but instead this is where you're learning the business at a pretty quick neck speed, breakneck speed. That's right. I always get those phrases confused. But the thing is that you're going to come in here, and then what part of the career field of cannabis will said graduate be able to go and apply for once they have this degree? What are some of the potential jobs they could go after?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for the master's program in particular, I think there's going to be two types of people, if you will. One group that has already an existing specialized skill set, for example, compliance. Maybe they're doing compliance in a different industry and they want to move into cannabis. So I think we're going to have folks who already have a career path, if you will, or a specialty, and are just trying to take their existing skills and move into cannabis. And then I think we're going to have people who maybe are more generalists or more just like very passionate about cannabis and want to be in the industry, but don't have a great foundation of both business and cannabis. And so I anticipate that there's going to be an incredible variety of opportunities available for our graduates, especially because, as I mentioned earlier, all those jobs are coming to New York and the tri-state area. And I think based on my conversations that I'm having with potential employers and potential internship providers, there's just such a need across the board for people that have business knowledge. So, I talked to an MSO a couple of days ago where they said they need to hire 90 people in the next year. They're opening new stores, they're expanding some of their brands. And, what they said very clearly to me was, we need people that can run a business, but also understand cannabis and how the industry works. And so that's really the space we're trying to occupy is giving people both the cannabis knowledge and the business knowledge so they can go into, whether it's a plant touching business, an ancillary business, or even if they want to start their own venture. So they have a really well-rounded understanding of the industry and its many complexities.
The other thing I got to think about, and this is where it's especially now these days when it comes to education, about how quickly the curriculum can change and how, any materials that you might give that might be physical could quickly be outdated because of the constant changes in compliance, constant changes in business protocol, and where legalization will come in at some point and roll out, and then the change in financial standards will also change. So how do you keep up with those changes?
Yeah, fantastic point. And you're absolutely right. I think one nice thing about our curriculum and our process here is that we anticipate that. And part of our process is, we revisit the curriculum every year and we make those updates. It's a pretty agile development process here where we bring in the subject matter experts from industry and pair them with an instructional designer. And then they work in tandem to develop the courses. And then we get feedback from external reviewers from industry as well. And of course, we get feedback from students in the classroom in real time as the courses are deployed. But it's something that I think is especially relevant in cannabis because, to your point, the regulations change, and what was legal or profitable one day is no longer relevant today. So I think that one of the, everything that's being developed right now for our curriculum is literally being developed right now. So it's pretty fresh and current, and everyone who's developing these courses and teaching these courses most of the faculty have been owners of their own businesses in the industry, while a handful have been employees at companies. But, the content that's being created right now is really, in my judgment, as relevant and as modern as it can be because they're building it right now.
Yep. We're going to go to commercial break. I'm here with the director of the Business of Cannabis Degree Program at LIM College, Michael Zaytsev. And by the way, for the website, if you want to learn about the degree program, you can go to their website, limcollege.edu. And for Michael, his own personal site where you can find everything that's going on with him, aside from his great educational work at LIM College, Michael Zaytsev, and that's spelled as ZAYTSEV.com. You can take a look at that as well. We'll be back after a short break.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
As one of the country's top 5 public universities, the University of Florida is on a mission to transform education and continue to develop breakthroughs that will help grow the nation's economy. As a national leader in AI, along with our #2 nationally ranked Career Connection Center, our students have never been better prepared to make a difference in the world. To learn more about how the University of Florida fuels bold ideas that make an impact across the globe, visit fromflorida.ufl.edu.
We're back with Michael Zaytsev, director of the Business of Cannabis Degree Program at LIM College in Midtown Manhattan, New York. Here on Blunt Business, Green Entrepreneur recently wrote this. I want to ask you in general about the cannabis industry and the educational opportunities right now for those who want to enter into the cannabis industry. If you were entering college, they wrote, and heard about a new industry that had grown 46% since 2019, would you pursue a degree in that field? If so, you'd be one of the thousands of students considering an education in cannabis. And according to Leafly, most recently, there are now 321,000 full-time American cannabis jobs. With the expansion, it's not surprising many accredited universities are investing time and money to cannabis education. They only offer a few classes, while others have full degrees in cannabis. So, Mike, I want to ask you then, what do you think about some of the opportunities so far? You are Norman Vincent Peale. You find the need and you're filling it right now with a master's and a bachelor's degree program in cannabis. But before that, some of the bigger higher educational types, private and public, have been putting classes together and they're trying to put degree programs together. What was out there before? What did you think about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I'll just share those numbers. They actually have released newer updates from Leafly on the employment side of things. And actually the industry today employs over 420,000 people.
Wow.
And so over 100,000 new cannabis jobs were created last year. And, just to put that in perspective, the entire financial industry in America created about 160,000 jobs last year. So it's very significant. And some of the projections I've seen are that number might quadruple in the next 15 years. So, we could have close to 2 million cannabis jobs in the next decade or so.
Well, but
especially if
New
we
York
see
was 30 to
legalization.
40,000, and who knows how quickly that exponentiates right away after the initial start.
Exactly, and if you look at the whole tri-state area where New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania are all moving on adult use legalization, And, that number could be 100,000 in the tri-state area just in the next couple of years. So, and again, that's just the US. Let's not forget, this is a global industry. So anyway, sorry, I got excited about that, but let me go back to your question, which is,
the other programs that have been made out there by other institutions before LIM put this program to light.
Yeah, so I've only seen a handful of institutions in the country that actually have cannabis degree programs. I off the top of my head, I could think of maybe 2 or 3, and I'm really not aware of any other full-on degree programs. That being said, I've seen some institutions that are doing certificate programs, which I think is a good way for people to maybe test the waters and see, hey, is this something that I'm interested in? But I personally believe that a degree program is, much more substantial, and it's something that you can go get a degree. Like, let's be very clear, our degree is a business degree. So you're going to learn everything that you would learn in any other business degree program, from accounting to, any of those kind of business fundamentals. Plus, for the undergrad, you'll have all your general education and liberal arts and sciences classes and all that stuff. But on top of that, you're also getting highly specialized cannabis industry knowledge that, to my knowledge, no other schools are really offering at scale in a meaningful way. There are a handful of schools that have cannabis degrees, as I mentioned, but from what I've seen, they are all specialized and not on business. So I know there's one that has a medical focus, one that has an agricultural focus, but our program is really focused on the business of cannabis. And, so we're not going to get into the hard science of cultivation and extraction so much. It's really preparing people to go work at cannabis businesses and to contribute from day one.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, and that thing is, there's going to be a down the line where you're going to have to see some educational programs, and there are some out there, not the higher institutions, that are doing that for cultivators and the agricultural side of things, or agricultural or mechanical side of where things are now. But maybe there should be a cannabis A&Ms down this line that actually handles that kind of thing right now going forward. But when you mentioned about which colleges are out there that are doing things like this, well, MJBiz actually focused on this, and they mentioned that in their MJBiz Factbook, which is most recently published, that they said the industry is expected to support between 425 and 520,000 full-time jobs in the U.S., go up to 670,000 by 2025. And one of the colleges they spoke with was the College of Science and Environment at Lake Superior State University in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, saying, quote, "We have students who are in their late 20s and early 30s who've quit their careers to come here." Another mentioning that, quote, "We have some registered nurses who hung it up and moved across the country to move here. Compliance has very high-paying jobs, and if you have a bachelor's degree, you can make more than a starting faculty member with a PhD." And with that said, we're seeing a lot of where it comes to compliance being a very important issue. And I was just talking to another guest before on this show about how important compliance is going to be now in terms of the whole business structure for MSOs expanding up, or any craft cannabis companies, and having an understanding of the software. It's like, and I've mentioned this before, and if the state of Maine or any other state decides to go and put Metric or another tracking software as like the ultimate must-have, not only are you going to have to go and spend the money to go and use that software, you're going to have somebody just like a Salesforce CRM. You're going to have to need somebody that knows how to work it and knows how to use it and apply it and communicate as the nucleus for everybody else out there. So I want to ask you this, Michael. What is it about when you look at the age groups, the demographics of those that are coming in on campus, are you seeing quite a bit of that, where you're seeing people that are leaving previous careers and transferring to cannabis and saying, okay, this 1-year degree will get me through the door into something else, and based on my current background, I could jump into compliance, or I could jump into something else pretty quickly?
Yeah, so I am seeing some of that. In particular, one example comes to mind, a prospective student for our master's program. shared with me that he was accepted to a master's degree program in engineering, and he was going to not go to that program to go instead to study cannabis with us. And, he mentioned that he's been waiting for something like this for years. I think there's a lot of people who are really passionate about the plant and want to be in the industry or want to create a career around cannabis because it's something that's meaningful to them, but they found it to be either too risky or intimidating. And so the fact that they could now go get a degree at an accredited institution and study cannabis, I feel like it not only makes it feel more approachable and safe for some people, but also it gives more legitimacy to the industry that you can even go and get a degree and go get a master's in the business of cannabis. I want to just respond to something that you mentioned, which I think is really important and interesting, which is, even just a few years ago, when people like myself who came from the tech world most recently and got into cannabis, now that was 8 years ago for me, but for others who are making that transition, for leaving a career behind in a different industry and coming into cannabis, more often than not, you were taking a pay cut to get into cannabis. Now, that is no longer the case. And especially for certain, seniority levels, for example, what I've heard from some of the recruiters I know in the space, middle managers in particular, and people that actually have leadership experience in corporate are now sometimes getting paid a premium to come into cannabis because there's such a gap there. And, now the MSOs and some of the bigger cannabis companies are well funded enough that they can afford to pay people more to attract talent over from other industries. So I think that's incredibly exciting. And, one other thing I'd mention, going back to one of your previous questions about, if I were a college kid, if I were a high school kid right now trying to get into this industry, what I've noticed personally going to conferences and trade shows and being in the cannabis community for several years now is I don't see a lot of young people at those events, and I think there's a big gap there that, I don't think by and large Gen Z has really gotten involved in the industry in a meaningful way. And so I think by being able to offer an undergraduate degree and provide, the younger generation with that knowledge and with internship opportunities and with industry connections, I think it's actually going to dramatically change the culture of the industry going forward.
Well, also not to mention the completion time for the program is 1 year.
Well, for the master's, yes. For the bachelor's, it's a 4-year standard undergraduate program.
I see. Okay, yeah. So bachelor's to master's, got it. Okay, perfect. But are there those that have already completed a bachelor's? I mean, when it comes to the eligibility of jumping into the master's, can you do that from your previous graduation of a bachelor's degree and then go right into the master's program?
Yes, you can. And if you have a prior bachelor's degree from any institution in any subject, you're eligible for the master's degree here.
Excellent. And that's why, and I was thinking about that. It's just that when I looked at some of the stories when I was looking at, I'm thinking there are a lot of people that will jump in because they'll have the bachelor's. Like, all right, well, if I get this here, where can I go next? And compliance, I know there's a lot of money in it. So that's the most important thing. We're going to go ahead and come back in real quick, and we'll focus on LIM College. We'll, hit the nail on the head home about the importance of the program. We're going to talk about that again with Michael Zaytsev, Director of the Business of Cannabis Degree Programs at LIM College. Again, website is limcollege.edu. You can go and look for the section on degrees under academics, and it'll show you everything that's there on campus and online available. Anyway, we'll be back after a short break.
Rolling into some sponsors, but we'll be right back with more Blunt Business.
Welcome back. I'm here with Michael Zaytsev, again, the author of the Cannabis Business book. We mentioned that earlier on the show. Director of High New York and the Director of Business of Cannabis Degree Programs at LIM College. And before the break, as we were in break, want to make sure you can also get a much easier way to get to the website, limcollege.edu. cannabis.edu/cannabis. That'll take you directly to the Cannabis Degree Program. They can take a look at that as well. So again, let's focus on the school itself. Again, based in New York City, center of the business and fashion universe. You have immersive learning by doing, including required internships, an industry professional faculty, and extensive networking opportunities, and a 95% career outcomes rate. One thing I want to ask about is anything you do in terms of job placement or any kind of recruitment after the fact. Have you been able to get any connection with any cannabis companies, especially in New York or New York City in general, where there are schools that are going to be looking out for your graduates or companies looking out for your graduates?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're having lots of conversations every day, and it's been actually a little overwhelming because so many companies have reached out to us asking, do you have interns? Do you have interns? Do you have candidates? And, which is a great thing. However, our programs launch in the fall. So, we don't have any cannabis graduates for them quite yet. However, to the point of this whole thing, some of our fashion students are well versed in the skill sets that these employers are looking for. And so, we've been able to make a few matches there, but it's been, I like joking that we have more cannabis internships right now than we have cannabis students. And so, the demand has definitely been there. And in fact, I've had people call me up and say, hey, I've got interns from Columbia, Ivy League school here in New York, but if I could get students from you who are actually studying cannabis and passionate about it, then, I would choose them. So, we've had a lot of interest. We've talked to companies, not only in New York and the tri-state area, but also on the West Coast, from the Midwest, MSOs, startups, from the hemp space, from the plant touching side of things, from the ancillary side of things. So one thing that's been pretty consistent is that it seems like industry is really excited to actually get access to talent that has cannabis education, formal cannabis education, because, otherwise it's really hard for these sometimes lean businesses to have to train people on the job. And, it's an industry-wide problem really, where there's really a lack of standardization of what it takes to be employed in this industry. Even from state to state, you might have to go through a different licensing or certification process, or you might be able to just show up and get a job. But for the most part, it seems like, actually, I'll share this anecdote. I remember one of the companies we spoke with said when they put up a job listing for a dispensary manager, they get thousands of applications. So imagine trying to pick a few qualified candidates to interview out of thousands of applications. So, my belief is that having a cannabis degree or a degree in the business of cannabis, will automatically put you towards the top of the list and will help you stand out from, the 999 other people applying for that dispensary manager position. Now, there's no guarantees of that, of course, and I'm not promising anything, but I do think that, retention is certainly a problem in cannabis businesses. And so I think it actually could save business owners a lot of expenses to have someone that, has clearly dedicated themselves enough to go get a degree in the business of cannabis. You can be pretty confident that, hey, this person wants to be here. This person wants to be in the industry. They're not just doing this because, it's the trendy thing. This person is committed. So I think it'll make a world of difference.
Fantastic. Michael Zaytsev, again, director of the Business of Cannabis Degree Programs at LIM College. Thanks for being on with us here on Blunt Business. Again, the website, limcollege.edu/cannabis. Thanks for being on with us again. Really appreciate you taking time out.
Thank you so much for having me.
And
I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. And thank you, listeners, for listening to another Blunt Business. We'll talk to you next time. The opinions expressed on this cannabisradio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of cannabisradio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.
As one of the country's top 5 public universities, the University of Florida is on a mission to transform education and continue to develop breakthroughs that will help grow the nation's economy. As a national leader in AI, along with our number 2 nationally ranked Career Connection Center, our students have never been better prepared to make a difference in the world. To learn more about how the University of Florida fuels bold ideas that make an impact across the globe, visit fromflorida.ufl.edu.